answer these major questions. Only Congress, the legislative branch of government, can answer these major policy questions. Agencies cannot usurp that authority and do so themselves. Now, aside from the fact that the Biden Student Loan Forgiveness Plan version 2.0 is just as illegal as the first one was, it's profoundly unfair as well. And I think it would be difficult for anyone to answer why it is fair to transfer money from those who have less to those who have more. It forces taxpayers, including people who did not go to college because they couldn't afford it, and people who worked their way through college, and people who saved money and then went to college. It forces them to pay for the student loans of those who ran up exorbitant student debt. That's simply unfair. As a parent scraping to set aside money for my own girls to go to college and watching them work their way through college or work to save money for college, I see this unfairness directly. And I think most Americans do as well, regardless of party, by the way. In conclusion, President Biden is defying the ruling of the United States Supreme Court while also seizing power from Congress. Fortunately, in America, we live in a constitutional republic, and the courts can strike down an illegal or unconstitutional executive act. That is what we are asking the court to do in this case, and we look forward to seeing the president's attorneys in court. I'd be happy to take your questions.
Could you tell us what happened the first time to people that thought they were going to have their loan forgiven, and what is happening now? Do they just have to get back on the payment schedule?
I do not have an exact answer for you. My understanding is that people who thought they were getting their loan forgiven in, say, 2023 were notified by the Department of Education that, in fact, their loan was still in place and still had to be paid off. I am aware that letters are going out right now under the second version of the Biden plan telling people that their loans are forgiven. And indeed, in Kansas, they've already sent out letters indicating that millions of dollars in loans have been forgiven. And they are, in fact, they made an announcement, I think it was this morning or last night, in anticipation of this case, celebrating how many millions of dollars in loan forgiveness had already been issued in Kansas. Well, that is illegal, and we will be asking the courts to enjoin that action.
That sort of raises the question of why are they doing this if the Supreme Court's already slapped their hand? Is this a campaign year and we're just doing this brazen thing to curry votes with the kids?
I think that's a possibility. It could be purely coincidence that the first student loan plan happened in 2022 in that election cycle, and it could be purely coincidence that the president is celebrating and making public statements about this student loan plan in the election cycle of 2024. Then again, it might not be pure coincidence.
Why is Kansas the one leading this lawsuit?
You know, there are a group of states that have basically joined together and acted whenever the Biden administration has crossed the boundaries of federal law or the Constitution. And unfortunately, that's happened a significant number of times. And so the states typically divide the labor. So you've seen the state of Texas, for example, take the lead in a number of immigration-related cases concerning the crisis at the border. You've seen the state of West Virginia take the lead in a number of environmental cases challenging the EPA. Kansas is stepping up now, and we agreed to take the mantle and lead the charge on this one. And you know, it's really a case like this is complex civil litigation. It involves a lot of attorneys doing the work, including the people standing behind me. And so it makes sense that different states would carry the load forward.
But arguably, a more conservative appellate circuit, the 8th Circuit or the 5th Circuit, might be a better venue for this to get a favorable ruling.
No, you're certainly reflecting, you know, what a lot of people observing the courts think. They look at so-called conservative circuits and so-called progressive circuits or liberal circuits. You know, the 10th Circuit stands somewhere in the middle, I would say. But I would say in a case like this, which is really unusual, where you have a Supreme Court ruling and then you have the administration turning around in less than a year and implementing something that appears to go directly against that ruling, it's so brazen that in any circuit, this case should prevail, including in the 9th Circuit.
Am I, as a taxpayer, paying the cost of this litigation that you're undertaking on behalf of the nation?
Well, not really. You're not paying any extra cost because we're doing this with personnel who are already part of the Kansas Attorney General's office. We're not hiring an outside law firm.
You guys could be doing other important work.
Well, we're making them do that work too. They're very busy.
Is it the special litigation
Yes.
Are you putting online, email or something, a copy of this petition?
It should already be attached. I think we are issuing a press release right now, and so it should be attached, or a link to it should be attached to that press release. And you can also, if you're on PACER, it was filed in the District Court of Kansas, Federal District Court for the District of Kansas. And the title of the case is State of Kansas and Others versus Joseph R. Biden and others.
You all, you mentioned a good chunk of the lawsuit talks about the faulty fiscal estimates, and you mentioned that here, and there's some discussion, but does it matter, given what you're arguing, what the cost is, if the point is that Congress has to approve it?
In one sense, your suggestion is correct that it wouldn't matter. If this is all decided by the major questions doctrine, then it wouldn't matter what the exact dollar amount of the student forgiveness is, other than it is large. Because the major questions doctrine says that when there is a major issue of public policy, and the larger the dollar amount means the more major or significant the question is. So the dollar amount measures insofar as it is large, but as to the very specific amount, one of the reasons we bring that to the attention of the court in our lawsuit, John, is that under the Administrative Procedure Act, an administrative agency is required to very precisely calculate the costs and benefits of a program, of an administrative program, before moving forward. Here they haven't bothered to accurately calculate the costs.
So how quickly do you think you can get this back up to the U.S.? I'm assuming that you're going to get a resolution from the U.S. Supreme Court at some point. How quickly do you think that can happen?
Well, a case like this sometimes moves on what is called the Supreme Court's emergency docket, where a lower court rules on a preliminary injunction motion, and then a court of appeals rules on an appeal of that preliminary injunction decision, and then sometimes the case moves directly to the Supreme Court without a final judgment in the court below. That might happen in this case, but I also suspect that if the Court of Appeals, where this case probably will land before long, if the Court of Appeals were to rule in the state's favor, the Supreme Court might very well say, okay, we'll let that decision stand. There's no need for us to take it. So I think it could move quickly to the U.S. Supreme Court, but when I say quickly, of course, that means relatively slowly in terms of what most people think of as in terms of fast. The U.S. Supreme Court will be shutting down in June. This case wouldn't even get to the 10th Circuit until at the very earliest late summer, and it takes the Court of Appeals, even on an expedited basis, several months to rule. And so, seeing this get to the U.S. Supreme Court before the end of the year would be highly unlikely, but possible.
How quickly do you think obviously you probably want an injunction, the argument being that this forgiveness is a harm,
and it's rolling too. So
right.
The sooner an injunction.
Stop paying, in theory,
right.
You're losing the opportunity.
Yeah, and
they don't pay.
We will be asking the court for a preliminary injunction. We hope that the court can act with relative dispatch and issue one fairly quickly, but that, of course, will be up to the court.
You campaigned on a pledge to sue Biden a bunch of times. Do you know how many times you've signed on to cases or taken the lead on them?
That's an interesting question. I haven't calculated that. Anyone want to venture a guess?
You guys don't
20? We don't have a tally sheet. We don't have a scoreboard on the wall. I would guess we've certainly signed on to, I would say, well over 10 cases by now. Well, some of them are comment letters in anticipation of a case. So an agency says they're going to do this in a proposed rule. We sign a comment letter. The comment letter is a signal to the administration that we will sue. And then when the agency promulgates a final rule, the suit happens. So if you count those as cases we're signing on to, it would certainly be closer to 20.
Any kind of formal one-loss record for you? Are you 3-1?
You know what?
What do we got?
Well, no, we haven't calculated that, but I would note that Kansas was one of the original 6 states that defeated the Biden administration in court in 2023. So I guess you could count that as one of our wins, but we've had other situations, like you may have heard, we issued a letter criticizing the New York Stock Exchange for attempting to implement a rule that has to be approved by the SEC that would create natural asset companies that could be bought and sold, and basically you're selling the opportunity to lock up land. We said that was inconsistent with federal law. And that was a letter that Kansas led, and the New York Stock Exchange backed down and said, okay, we won't do it. So that is a victory that was won without a lawsuit. So we have, in many instances, jumped in as the state taking the lead. In other cases, we have allowed the other states to take the lead.
Think Biden will get all nervous about this and just fold?
I wonder how much Biden is aware of on a day-to-day basis that the Justice Department is engaged in. Maybe they'll tell him, I don't know.
Thinking of the workforce question earlier, just to handle this case, I mean, we're in the State House, the legislature has considered other bills that would require more work, more staffing of your office. Any update on the filling of the vacancies and how you'd be able to handle some of those other new tasks should the legislature and government?
Yeah, so when I took office, there were approximately 25 attorney vacancies. We have filled the majority of those. I had it in my statement to the relevant legislative committee earlier. I think we have filled approximately 17, maybe 15 or 17 of those. So we still have some vacancies. It's a tough hiring environment right now, and we are hiring quality people wherever we can find them. And because we have so many vacancies, we can hire the person with talent and then find one of the empty places for them to fill. So that's really what we're doing right now. We've been blessed to have a number of really great attorneys, two of whom, well, of course, the Solicitor General is one too, but two young attorneys who are standing behind me who are of exceptional talent and caliber. And they have come in and have a skill set that's ideal for this type of litigation. But they're also involved in other cases. So, for example, defending Kansas laws is in the wheelhouse. It's in the basket of things that every Attorney General's office does, and they're also engaged in some of the defense of state of Kansas law too.
Mr. Kobach, are you concerned about, follow-up to that, the legislature, it happens routinely that they're adding responsibilities for your office in various bills. I think you're supposed to now monitor welfare or something?
So
Are you kept track of that, or are you
we are keeping track of that.
piling on?
We are keeping track of that, and we have asked the legislative committees if they are going to give our office more jobs to do. We are willing and happy to accept those responsibilities, but we are asking them to give us more funding so that we can hire more attorneys to do the work. And I have notified them many times that it's a tough hiring environment right now. It's a good time to be coming out of law school because there are not enough attorneys to fill the many jobs that a state needs done.
You, and speaking of bills, you made a comment after the House passed its version of the foreign land ownership bill that you were happy to see them act, but that bill would be difficult to defend in court. And the statement didn't explain why.
Yeah, the reason why was that the 11th Circuit of the U.S. Court of Appeals recently issued a ruling on a preliminary injunction motion where they ruled against Florida's law, which contains language very similar to the House version of the plan. I'm not saying it's impossible to defend, but I'm saying the Senate version of the plan would be 100% defensible, and I would feel much more confident going into court defending that one.
What's the difference?
We only have time for one more question.
How did you feel about your bill dying in the Senate committee?
My understanding is that they were going to try to work these, since it had already been heard by the committee, that it was conferenceable, and they would try to hopefully work out some of these issues in conference. My understanding is that the issue is going to a conference committee anyway, as I suggested in my statement to the press.
General, so you're saying nobody in the student loan has received monies from the government on prepaid at all?
Well, they don't, as you know, when a loan is forgiven, you don't receive money directly. The loan is just canceled, and you have to stop paying money. But it is you are being given funds by the federal government effectively. My understanding is that letters have already been going out under version 2.0 of the Biden Student Loan Forgiveness Plan, where people are receiving letters telling them that their loan is canceled, they have nothing left to repay. And they have confirmed that in the state of Kansas, I don't remember the dollar figure exactly. Let me ask Abby, do you remember off the top of your head? 10 million? $10 million worth has already been forgiven. According to them, you can check with the Department of Education.
And can that be reversed then or not?
Yes, it can be, and that would be the appropriate thing, yeah.
All right, thank you, everyone. If you have more questions, please direct them to our office.
All right, thank you, appreciate it.